The hatch beneath Brush Street. Detroit stacks itself in layers. On the surface, towers blink like patient eyes. Below, trains cut steel veins through brick. Beneath even those lie rooms the city never named, utility hollows and relief floors that show up in old paperwork like blanks needing signatures. People whisper about one of them, level 0.5, the quiet levels. It isn't on maps. There is no plaque. Only one detail repeats. When people find it, something below them counts. 3 urban documentarians went to see if it existed. Miles led with a stitched map of retired engineers' memories and grimy schematics. Maya handled sound, trained to hear patterns inside noise. Theo wrangled light, turning dust into snow. They filmed without tricks. Their audience came for proof. After 1 a.m, they slid under a fence on Brush Street and entered a sealed spur where tiles still shone weakly and signs pointed to nowhere. Their footfalls didn't travel. The tunnel folded them back. Maya found the hatch, a steel circle flush to the floor, a corroded naval wheel at its center. She pressed an ear to it and went still. Far below, layered breath rose in time, too steady for pipes, too soft for machines. "It's counting," she said. They mounted a camera, set a lamp, and turned the wheel. Russ screamed, then gave way in even clicks, as if a code was being accepted. Cold air rose. The hatch lifted. A concrete spiral dropped into darkness, steps with raised grip like a cautious engineer's sketch. Miles chalked an arrow in the time. On the stairs, sound folded inward. Each step felt like closing a book. 20 marks later, a landing waited with a polished blank recess where a plaque should have been. Beyond was a cream and green corridor whose pattern almost repeated, but never quite did. The air hummed, not machine hum, but breath held just below speaking. Every 30 feet, they left an arrow and a word. Up. Exit. Home. The passage opened onto a low platform with bolted benches, dented bins, and a beige sign hurriedly painted. Level 0.5. The 0 slashed as if to insist it was a number. Across from it hung a waist-high mirror, edges fogged. Their reflections lifted cameras a fraction later than they did. No one mentioned the lag. The recorder would later. Behind the glass, the hum thickened into cadence, like mouths rehearsing syllables. The trio pressed on. Grates exhaled air too cold for the depth. Doors wore padlocks stamped with years that didn't fit the system. Their chalk began to tilt, strokes drifting off true, as if an unfamiliar hand were imitating them. Down one branch, an arrow in their own style, pointed left though none remembered drawing it. The walls tried to name. Maya stopped. The recorder caught her breath in a clean hush. The sound was mini-mouth shaping the first consonant together, closer on the second attempt. They turned back, keeping their rule: don't split. Trust the feeling when marks feel wrong. The platform returned. So did the mirror. As they passed, their reflections kept walking one step longer than their bodies. The glow stick they had clipped to the hatch wheel above should have painted the shaft mouth green. It had been drained to gray. Theo lifted a lamp. The beam fractured as if light had to pass through water. Miles braced both hands on the wheel. Metal groaned and refused. From below, the cadence focused into counting in their ears. It wasn't urgent. It was patient. Another exit, Maya said. The central line should intersect south. Follow our marks. Stay calm. They boxed up beside the wheel and underlined it twice. South, the halls misremembered themselves. A service gallery had become an off-center waiting room. A fogged window hit a scrape. When Theo's beam crossed the glass, a second light drifted inside like a lantern just out of frame. Move, Maya said, decision, not fear. They crossed a graded run over black water that rippled without a source, as if the pool had chosen to acknowledge them. At a dead end, a tall mirror-reflected corridor for yards that didn't exist. In the glass, their chalk curled into a bright hallway where sconces burned calm white. When they turned to check, the real corridor remained dim. When they looked back, the bright hall was gone. A lazy bend opened into a vaulted station too grand for the depth. Murals mimicking Art Deco, faces blurred at the edge of sight. A soft click followed them pillar to pillar, like distant relays flipping. The pattern 3, 2, 3, 2 thumped above. Heartbeat, Maya whispered. Not ours. Relief arrived at a landing marked up another ceiling hatch. Theo spun the wheel, grinning, and watched mechanics move without engagement. It returned to start without traveling back, the way dreams pretend to obey physics. Not connected, he said. Below them, the whispering gathered, as if the level had taken a seat to watch. They retreated again, where the map promised an emergency stairwell. A shallow room lay knee-high with fog and 3 wooden ladders side by side, the middle rung on each freshly replaced and faintly scorched. None stepped in. A maintenance catwalk ended at a door stamped service access only with a stubborn old padlock. They filmed it and kept their rule: document, don't destroy. On a tight curve, shoulder-height mirror reflected one person at a time. Miles saw himself a year different. Maya made a small involuntary sound, and would later say the mirror showed her walking alone, speaking to a hallway that didn't answer. Beyond, ordinary station noise, footsteps, paper, a dry cough played without bodies, and then simply stopped, as if someone had ended the scene. A door with a blank brass plate opened into a monitoring room. Dead terminal, empty gauges, a shelf of VHS tapes labeled with the same day across years. On the field deck, a ceiling view showed this bend and mirror. 3 figures crossed beneath the lens lights, harness, recorder, and kept walking into empty time while the present stood in the doorway. They turned the deck off. It refused to eject the tape. Another hour of misdirections followed. Twice their chalk guided them into halls that no longer existed. Once they saw themselves far ahead crossing a graded bridge. When they hurried, the silhouettes turned a corner into architecture that did not fit the floor plan underfoot. Exhaustion smudged edges. The whispering matched their pulses. They stopped on a platform with brass rails and no benches. Where maps should be, a mirrored panel reflected a hatch while burning bright green and a hallway bending toward daylight. They filmed minutes of nothing moving, then turned away because turning away was the only move left. By routes they couldn't later explain, they drifted back to the first platform, the /O sign, the dented mirror. On the far edge, chalk in Miles's hand read up. Someone had circled it and added already in the same chalk, but a different hand. They slept in shifts. During Miles's watch, the opposite mirror fogged from inside. When cleared, the platform behind their reflected bodies was empty. A blink corrected it, like the glass was embarrassed. At waking, Maya said, "We're leaving." They chose the only corridor without their marks and climbed a long stair. At the top waited another wheel. Their chalk read out. The hatch lifted an inch and pressed shut like a mouth. A new lock clicked where none had been. "If it can learn our names," Maya said, "it can learn our rules." So we break one. We split. They had never split. The rule had kept them safe everywhere else. But in a place that misremembers, misbehaving might be the only path back. They looked once at one another and stepped 3 ways, the counting behind them pleased to learn a more complicated rhythm. The exit that follows. Alone, the quiet levels sounded wrong, as if the halls weren't sure how many feet belonged to each echo. Miles took the left route narrow, with a low conduit forcing a crouch. He moved steady, marking quick arrows, counting for the recorder. The corridor kinked into offices with frosted glass that glowed from no source. Behind one panel, a silhouette stood patiently. When he slowed, it shifted weight like a tired person and kept waiting. Maya took the middle clean tile, fresh grout, a domestic hush like a hallway outside closed bedrooms. She logged time, direction, number of marks. Her voice returned not as echo, but as agreement. Passing a glass door, her reflection didn't carry a recorder. It held a map. She didn't look twice. Theo took the right, a maintenance spine of conduit and metal. Lights flickered in sequence, mercifully human. On his third mark, the chalk line skipped as if the wall had moved. He left it crooked on purpose to prove it was his choice. They were meant to meet in 3 minutes. At 4, Maya said call. Static answered, then Theo, here. Miles, here. Each reversed course along their own chalk. The quiet levels disliked straight lines. Miles reached a junction and found 2 arrows that were his and one that wasn't, pointing into a crawl too small for a pack. He peered in with the camera. A postcard-sized mirror waited at the end. In it, a camera lens moved closer from the dark. He withdrew. Maya reached a door with a red exit sign, wrong era, but persuasive. It opened onto a narrow bridge over black water. Halfway across, she saw the reflections below didn't match the lights above. In the water, 3 beams moved where only one should. The far door opened a crack and closed, opened and closed like a hand testing. She backed away, keeping the bridge between herself and what she wouldn't watch. Theo climbed a short stair. At the top, a chest-high mirror showed an endless stairwell brightening to daylight. In the real air, dust danced in his beam. In the glass, no dust fell. He touched the pane, whispered no, and turned back. They converged by decisions more than coordinates. Seeing one another, something unclenched. 1, Theo said. 2, Maya said. 3, Miles said. The hum answered with a sum. A nearby mirror fogged, then cleared. In it there were 4. The 4th stood a step behind Miles, head tilted as if listening to something only it could hear. The 3 kept their faces still. The 4th inhaled. The recorder logged it as ambient. Don't acknowledge, Maya said. Walk. They walked. The 4th matched. When they slowed, it slowed, late, always a beat off, as if the place couldn't quite learn their rhythm. They moved without the map now. Their chalk mattered and didn't. Where they found their own, they followed. Where they found others, they avoided. The 4th never went ahead. It learned. The first platform returned by a route none of them could later describe. The /0 sign waited. The dented mirror watched. No hatch appeared. No spiral opened. The only door out was a waist-high swing gate meant to tame a line. They flipped it and stepped through. On the opposite wall, fog thickened in a mirror and clear to show the hatch above them, as if from a floor camera. In the reflection, a glow stick burned bright green. The wheel turned quarter, half, three-quarters. The hatch lifted and then shut. The glow died. "Stop watching," Maya said quietly. She led them toward the one corridor with no marks at all. The fourth followed. This passage simply allowed. Tile became concrete. Concrete became metal plating, the floor rising in shallow, irregular steps like a winter path. Air warmed. Somewhere ahead, water dripped in clockwork rhythm. A door with a narrow window held nothing behind it, no silhouette, no borrowed light. They climbed. They found a hatch in a vault-smooth ceiling, a single wheel at its center, a spent glow stick discarded nearby. The wheel turned and met resistance, then gave it a plain, honest click. The panel lifted. Warm night air spilled down. Cold grease, dust city. "Push," Miles said. They pushed and rose into a maintenance room, dust on everything. An unplugged vending machine, a metal desk, a dead terminal, a yellowed permit notice with an out-of-date logo. The fourth did not climb. The hatch stayed open. The place below waited, patient, not pleading. It tried the door. A hallway of soft industrial white led past bus route posters, and a wall calendar turned to May. The squares were blank. The 18th was circled. The 0 in a month was slashed. They reached a small loading bay. Night lay beyond in ordinary wait. A street with a name waited for feet. Somewhere a delivery truck coughed awake. They stepped out. The air peeled from their faces like a second shirt. They pulled the door closed. It didn't lock. The counting continued under the floor, neither louder nor softer, just itself. They walked back toward Brush Street without speaking. Cars passed. A cyclist laughed at something on a phone. The city behaved like a place that had never practiced a name in its walls. At the car, they packed on autopilot. The camera monitor flickered once with an image of the glowing hatch, the wheel turning another quarter, then returned to a quiet parking lot. A radio clicked on by itself and filled the cab with breath-shaped static. Maya turned it off. At the studio, files copied with the drowsy stutter of a tired person nodding and catching himself. In review, reflections lag when they shouldn't and moved ahead when they should lag. In one frame, a fourth hand adjusted a strap. In the next, Miles's hand did the same. On a corridor shot, a silhouette behind frosted glass shifted at the exact moment a distant traffic light changed from red to green. They checked time codes against a public feed and stopped after the third match. They uploaded without dramatizing. The video showed the hatch, the descent, the beige sign, the mirrors, the ladders, the blank plaques. The whispering stayed low, so listeners leaned closer without knowing why. Comments stacked by morning. "Fake," some said. "Don't go back." Others wrote with borrowed authority. "I heard my name." A few wrote, then many. That afternoon, the gray glow stick on their work table pulsed once and went still. Briefly powered, the recorder displayed 4 seconds of a hallway mirror and a soft glow under a maintenance door. They did not return to Brush Street that week or the week after. Still, on the 18th between 2 and 3 a.m., motion sensors in a sealed spur logged 3 bodies moving south, then 4 returning north. The cameras had been off for years. The system recorded the motion like a reflex. People who never watched urban exploration saw a clipped hatch and a drained glow turning green. Some slept with lights on and found the lights lagged a second behind the switch. Beneath whatever city they lived in, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, there was always a floor between floors, humming like a room full of breaths under a blanket. It waited for footsteps. It learned their rhythm. It practiced the names of the ones who listened. It counted to 3, then to 4, and held that number patient as a turned wheel, steady as a green glow, certain as tile that almost repeats and never quite does.